I took a little bit of a break from working on the Astra to load up Jumanji to take my family on a camping trip to our favorite camping spot in BC. This trip we had the best tent setup we've ever had. The foam square simulated hardwood flooring in the tent was a last minute idea that really made a huge difference in the tent. So there's a tip for you guys if you also like to get out and do some camping. The trip is over now, and as usual, I feel like we've hit the reset button. Now back to work on the old Pontiac, and as always, I'm gonna get some more budget parts or homemade parts to work on the car as cheap as I possibly can. Well, I was right about to slide the steering column in and see how badly it hits the exhaust manifold on this side, but first I'd like to get this speedometer cable out of the way. So I have the gear that I saved from the transmission that came out of the car, so hopefully it'll just pop in and screw into the Turbo 350 that's in the car now. Okay, so now I've got the speedometer cable run through all the factory little mounting holder thingies, and this speedometer gear came out of this initially, so now it's going back in there. So now we have the old speedometer gear from the last transmission on the output shaft, and that's going to drive this little guy, which is going to tell us how fast we're going. Now I'll just slide that in place, make sure it's all the way in there, and then we have this teeny little tab, and that's what holds it in place. Okay. Hey guys, welcome to episode 7. So in this episode we're going to be dealing with some clearance issues. The steering column can't go in the car without clearancing the exhaust manifolds, so that's one thing that we're going to do. But for now I'm just going to hook up the throttle linkage real quick. I'll show you what that looks like, and then yeah, we'll see what we can get done. So I went ahead and installed the alternator using the bracket that I fabricated in episode 1. I think that the bracket's actually going to be too tall, so I think it's going to hit the hood, but that's something that we'll cross that path later on. What I have done is I've installed the throttle cable that hooks up to the carburetor here. The only thing I was missing is this teeny little ball right there that this cable clicks onto. Just for that it was 25 bucks, and I spent 100 bucks on this whole carburetor, so that's quite an expensive piece considering I'm trying to be as cheap as possible in this build, but it works. I'll show you. Okay, so we just got to do a little bit of clearancing here. The steering shaft is in, and as you can see, it's actually pivoting right on the header there. So this header is going to come off and going to heat and bash that. And on this side, right here on this brace, it's just touching. So this header is going to come off. We're going to heat it and bash it in there too. Is that roughly where the steering wheel is going to sit?
Okay.
Can you turn the wheel to the right? A little more? Oh yeah. Sweet. Okay, so we've clearanced the headers here. So now we have lots of room for the steering shaft to go through. It's not hitting anything. So headers got to come back off, sand them down, repaint them. Good to go. I got the headers all painted up again, and this looks well, that looks really good right there, so you won't really even see that much, but good enough. So before the comments blow up with people who have their opinion about header bashing and losing horsepower, go watch Engine Masters. David Freiberger did a great test where he just beat the hell out of headers and lost maybe half a horsepower after they looked like they were run over by a tank. So no horsepower losses here. So I've got my throttle cable all hooked up, but this spring can't stay here because that hole is actually where the transmission kickdown cable goes. So here's the kickdown cable here, and basically what it does is when you're at wide open throttle, this gets pulled out and then it goes into a passing gear, so it drops a gear so you can really get going. With this carb spacer that I have here, the factory kickdown cable actually doesn't reach. It's about that far away. But I did find this in an old bucket of bolts. So that square right there is what this part clicks into. So once I get this in its home, that'll work perfectly. But then I need a place to mount the return spring. So I'm just gonna cut this thing up and make it work for this application. Got the tabs cut off this piece and it's nice and smooth, so I just got to take it outside and paint it. Well, the mounting bracket for the transmission kickdown cable is curing outside, but I need a place for now for the throttle return spring to sit onto, and I think I have the perfect idea. Now, I could use a sprocket from a motorcycle, but I don't think I'm going to go with that. I could use a piece of deer bone. There's a deer bone right there. I could also use a license plate from a motorcycle. I could cut a piece right out of this motorcycle. That's ridiculous. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use chain, because that's what we did for the alternator bracket, so that's gonna be perfect. Don't touch that dial, folks. Coming up next, chain link. More than just for pulling an engine out of a car. return spring is installed, the headers are installed, and yeah, the steering shaft is going to clear there. You can't even really see where it's been bashed in, so that looks great. And then if we come around to this side, you can see that that little dimple I had to put in that header is just perfect. So we're all done. Done for now anyways. Well, that's a wrap for episode 7. I hope you guys liked it. I got all the puzzle pieces in place, so when I hit that gas pedal, this thing will go. It's just gonna take a bit of work to get everything all hooked up. Oh, and it needs a rear end and wires. There's not a single wire going to the engine. It needs a radiator installed. I gotta hook up the tachometer, oil pressure gauge, temp gauge, ball joints from the S10 truck, the 5-lug conversion, parking brake, the transmission shift rod, and then once all that stuff's done, I mean, then I'll be able to just bleed the brakes and take this thing for a drive. That was fast.
It's pretty rusty, man.
Yeah? Still got parts for sale. Hit me up. Comment below.